Greetings, welcome back to Black Bear News, where we are discussing climate change, abrupt climate change, and things adjacent. It's the most important story on the planet right now, and most news channels are not covering it. Some progressive channels are trying to cover it, but they're doing mostly politics and a little bit of climate change. And that little bit of climate change is going to wipe the entire human species off the face of the earth. So perhaps we should adjust the politics to the climate change instead of adjusting the climate change to the politics. Just my thoughts on that. We are officially in the dog days of summer in Los Angeles. It's just hot every day. So doing my videos with the door open to my studio. My dog does not like the heat, and she is lying on a bed of ivy in the shade trying to keep out of the heat. It seems pretty comfortable, so hopefully that's working out for her. So a few people have said that my mic level has been low over the last couple of videos. I'm sorry, I don't know what's going on. I have the mic, all the levels exactly where they usually are, so it might be some other factor that I have no clue about what to do. So I'm working on that. Hopefully it'll just magically come back in this video. So let's get into some climate change news. The dog days of summer. I guess you could say we're entering the dog days of climate change because we're just getting hotter and hotter and hotter. July was the world's hottest month on record, WMO says. And this is from 7 hours ago, August 1st. The latest data from the World Meteorological Organization shows the month of July at least equaled, if not surpassed, the hottest month in recorded history, and it followed the hottest June ever, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said Thursday. The UN chief told reporters, this is even more significant because the previous hottest month, July 2016, occurred during one of the strongest El Niños ever. So that's really key. That's when, the peak of an El Niño is when we're supposed to be getting peak temperatures. We are not in an El Niño. So what happens when the next El Niño comes? One can only imagine. This is the hottest month in the history of temperature data globally. An El Nino is a natural warming of the ocean that once it interacts with the atmosphere often warms up the globe and changes rainfall and temperature patterns, making some places wetter and some places drier. Gutierrez said the latest weather data, including temperature-shattering records from New Delhi and Anchorage to Paris, Santiago, Adelaide, Australia, and the Arctic Circle, means the world is on track for the period from 2015 to 2019 to be the 5 hottest years on record. I thought we had already established that, but hey. He warned that if all nations don't take immediate action to tackle climate change, extreme weather events happening now are just the tip of the iceberg, and the iceberg is also rapidly melting, Gutierrez said. Arctic sea ice is already near record low levels, he said, and the European heat wave last month has raised temperatures in the Arctic and Greenland by 10 to 15 C. Preventing irreversible climate disruption is the race of our lives and for our lives, Gutierrez said. It is a race we can and must win. Well, that's optimistic, but I like the spirit. I don't know about the can. Must do something. Somebody do something. Yeah, again, we're not seeing enough politically about climate change. We're seeing very, very tepid. Climate change is about to devastate the planet, and that's about as about as far as the top talk goes. if you actually got into the nuts and bolts about, what it is we would have to do to actually mitigate climate change. Oh, that's when the red flags go up. What? And as efforts to keep climate change at the top global agenda, the Secretary General has organized a Youth Climate Summit for September 21st to be followed by a Climate Action Summit for world leaders on September 23rd, the day before the annual gathering at the UN General Assembly. Let's hope this raises some awareness. I know that XR is planning some events as well around that date. Guterres says he looks forward to welcoming young leaders, including 16-year-old Swedish climate activist Greta Thunberg. Hard to break that habit. He said he has told leaders from governments, business, and civil society that the ticket to entry is bold action and much greater ambition, not beautiful speeches. Hear, hear. The 2015 Paris Climate Agreement aims to keep global temperatures from rising more than 1.5 C. Hardy har har by the end of the century. Yeah. If we can keep it from 1.5 C by the end of this year, that would be great. But guess what? We've already passed 1.5 C. How about telling people the truth, UN Secretary General? How about we just have an honest discussion about this? He said the greenhouse gas emissions which cause global warming must be cut by 45%. No, 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 no. And we need carbon neutrality. No. By 2050. No. No. This is what I would say if I was having a conversation or was in the audience at something that the UN Secretary General was talking. No, 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 no. Carbon neutrality by whatever. Carbon neutrality by 2030. And but do we have a lot to do between 2019 and 2030? Anyways, I'm going to link this below. I'm not going to read any more of it. I've already read most of it. In other news, that we are devastating that planet hand over fist, and that nobody seems to care because obviously nobody's talking about this on the nightly news. Maybe they did. I don't know. I don't watch CNN or MSNBC. I'm subjected to Fox News, not by my choice, but Fox News is just a lunatic asylum of people. I don't. Anyways, but I see enough of what CNN is saying. I gather that they're really not talking much about this. Earth Overshoot Day shows we're tearing through resources faster than ever. July 29th, that was just a few days ago, marks the point at which we start to consume more than Earth can replenish. And the date is getting earlier each year. We're not quite to 2 Earths yet, but really, really close, because the solstice is June 20th. So we're only a month away, a month earlier, and we will be nearing the using 2 Earths worth of resources. The problem is that we are running out of resources. The problem is that we have way, way, way too many people, and we've been doing this year after year after year, decade after decade after decade. You know what I'm saying? So if you're using 1.7 Earths one year, where does the 0.7, what happens when you get to the next year, right? You're already in a deficit of, in what way can Earth replenish itself? It cannot. On Earth 29, we cross an alarming threshold. On July 29, we crossed an alarming threshold. The date marks Earth Overshoot Day, the point each year at which humanity starts to consume the world's natural resources faster than they can be replenished. It's taken us only 209 days to burn through a year's worth of resources. Everything from food and timber to land and carbon. We are using up nature 1.75 times faster than it can be replenished. To do this sustainably, we would need the resources of 1.75 Earths. So let's talk realistically about if we were to get back to using 1 Earth full of resources a year, that would mean that we would have to drastically reduce our economies, our consumption, our need for whatever it is, timber and palm oil and cattle and corn and fossil fuels, etc. We might want to have less people on the planet too. That means equals less babies. And the only way I can think to do that is to have the United Nations or have a global agreement, you know, that there will be a limit on births. It has to be global. It has to be across the board so that everybody feels like it's fair. Rich countries and poor countries, every country. And I could talk more in depth about that. I don't have time in this video too, and I will maybe another time. It's like being in financial debt, only much harder to recover. There's nothing to kickstart the economy if we overuse our resources. He said, because every economic activity depends on natural capital, and without that, it's not going to work. Economic activity depends on natural capital. Economic activity needs to stop. Stop. Stop what you're doing. We need to have stop eating the Earth's day. Stop eating the Earth day, or stop using fossil fuels day. Stop consuming day, not just, the day after Black Friday. We need to have whole weekends where this happens. We need to have it happen over and over and over and over again. I'm suggesting this to all the climate activists out there, XR and any other strikers, that they add this boycott into their platform. This, stop consuming. Forests are being felled at an alarming rate. Yes. So I'm gonna link this below. You can see. How many Earths do we need? This is interesting. How many Earths do we need if the world's population lived like the USA? 5. So the United States is clearly, far and away, the biggest user of resources and fossil fuels. The U.S. military alone uses the largest amount of fossil fuels of any entity on Earth. Australia, 4.1. Russia, 3.2. And just for another point of scale, California's economy alone is the 5th richest economy on the planet. So our economy is actually larger than the country of Russia, which is fairly amazing. Germany, 3 Earths. So look at, in almost every developed country, or first world country, if we want to use that term, and including China, 2.2, over 2 Earths. Brazil, 1.7, India, 0.7. So India is doing pretty good as far as using uh But they too want all the goodies. They want the cars and the washing machines and the, Americanized lifestyle. So they're going to go up here, I think, sometime soon. This can't be good. Again, we need, we need action on a global level. And we need radical, by radical action, not carbon credits, not, buying electric cars, not switching over to renewable energy. No, we need to, actually, when I said, so yesterday I was talking about the fact that if you had a town or a city or a spot that needed to have their goods shipped in by airplane, that probably you shouldn't exist. But, and not to just single out small remote places. Almost every city, country, nation, society, community relies on a major amount of shipping fossil fuels, and we rely on all these resources that we're using up to stay alive. If you took away the resource of fossil fuel, or if you took away international shipping, or just-in-time delivery, or just-in-time shipping to keep the supply of goods and resources going to almost any place in the world right now, people would die. So, it's not just the remote places, and I'm not trying to make it seem like, but you know, somebody actually brought up a really good example in the comments about the Hawaiian Islands being a place that relies on, you know, everything being shipped in, not everything, but you know, a majority of their stuff. That's why it's so expensive to live there. However, there used to be there was a time when the Hawaiian Islands had an indigenous population before we, Western civilization or white civilization, arrived and, you know, remade the Hawaiian Islands in our own image. They were perfectly, you know, there wasn't a problem. They did not have to rely on international shipping to live. They did not have to rely on air travel or anything, you know, or you know, goods and services being brought in from the mainland. That's not. They were, you know, they farmed, they fished, and they lived. They lived off the land. This is something that if we really want to fight climate change or mitigate climate change or go in the other direction, and I know it's really late in the game. I'm not saying this without the understanding. We all need to learn how to live as indigenous people, live off the land, live with, you know, the resources around us. You know, we're talking walking, running, swimming, sailing, bicycling, anything that doesn't use fossil fuels, anything that doesn't use this amazing amount of resources. We'd have to make most of our own stuff. We'd have to grow most of our own food. That's how it would be done or should be done. And there are people leading by example. There are people on this channel that live in that fashion or attempt to live in that fashion. And I applaud you and support you. And, you know, that's the message that should be, people should be talking about with their family, friends, even news channels, progressive or otherwise, should be like, well, you know, this economy has pretty much destroyed the environment. So it's, you know, how do we live outside of this economy? Horrors. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. If you would like to support this channel, you can do so at the links below. Until next time, peace.